Are you ready to hear about a really super trippy dream? I mean, this one, I'm still processing this particular dream. It was not last night, it was the night before. Um, and I had a dream similar to this before, but not to this particular scale. So I'm in this house and I'm touring the house and I'm going to eventually buy this house. So when I'm touring the house, I separate from the people I'm with and I stumble upon this whole section of this house. It's almost like a portal because there was so much more. And let me describe it as imagine an old Victorian house or a really old house, the attic of that house. Dark and dusty, there's no lighting. It's just, really dark and dusty. So this is the section of the house and it's like I'm walking around and it's huge. It's massive. From the outside of the house, you can't even imagine possibly that even being a part of the house. There's no way it would be possible for that amount of space to be in that house. But yet it's there. So then I go through this whole process of I've bought the house and there's some leakage going on somewhere in the house and it's in one of these weird areas of the house, right? That really logically and physically should not exist, but it does. And I'm trying to tell them, the people that are there to help repair it, of how to get to that area. And they're talking about removing the roof. And I'm like, no, you can't remove the roof. If you take off, first you're going to have to take off the shingles. Then you're going to have to take off the whole roofing itself, the whole roof. And then you're still not going to be to the part that has the leak. So usually when there's water involved, that's an emotional tie. Let's get that part. And when you're dreaming of a house, you're usually dreaming about, it has to do with the inner you. Okay, so keep that in mind as I go through this. So I'm trying to explain how to get to this section, and they're not understanding, and it's extremely complicated because it's like a part that should not really exist logically or physically, but it's there and it's a massive space. It's a massive area. So moving past that, then me and the group of people I'm with, we find ourselves back to that space. They had not seen this space before. I had been the only one to see this space, but we all end up in this space that looks like a very old, dark and dirty and dusty attic. But it's huge. It's massive. It's not a tiny little space, and it's not like an attic space. It just looks like that. And there is a part of the floor that just looks different. And I'm telling them, be careful of that space, that floor. Don't walk on that section of floor. That's not sturdy. That's not good. That's not safe to walk on. Somebody steps on it anyway and falls through. So immediately the rest of us rush over there and I stick my head down into the floor and suddenly I'm seeing furniture that looks like it's probably from the 60s. Very Art Deco kind of style furniture. And I remember it's a blue sofa, like a really deep dark blue, kind of like that kind of blue but more subdued, not as bright. And I'm like, what is that space? There was just furniture there. Like, where is that coming from? And where is that in this house? It doesn't make sense. So we go through that and end up being inside of like a shop, some sort of shop. It reminded me of the Boots Pharmacy shops in the UK. If anyone's from the UK, you know what a Boots Pharmacy looks like. For anyone in the US, it's like a CVS or a Walgreens or something like that. It's a little pharmacy shop. It's what it looks like. And I'm like, how is this even possible? How does this exist within my house? How is this even here? And so you're walking around through the shop and you walk out the door and suddenly you were in the middle of a very busy city in the middle of the day. Now I want to say when you went into the actual house, it was kind of evening time. So not only is this, first, getting to that space that doesn't make sense, right? So you have the house, and within this house is a space that's larger than the house itself. So how is that inside of that house, right? And then there's this, let's just call it a portal in the floor. That first is a time portal because it takes you back to like another era. But then when you go in, you're not even just in another era, you're in a completely different location. You're not like in the suburbs somewhere. You're in the middle of a busy city and a different time again in the middle of the day. What is that about? So you're looking at, okay, so the house is the inner you, and in this inner me, there is this whole undiscovered area that is bigger than the self, than the self. And then there's portals where you can go to different times and different places. They're like different realities inside different realities, different times inside different places. Anyone else experience dreams like this? Now, I had dreamed in the past years ago about a house similar. It was another house in another state, not a house I've ever been to or ever seen, but again, it was a house that was my house that I was buying or I was moving into that had a space that, looking at the house logically and physically, it shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't exist. And again, that space looked like an old, dusty, dirty attic space, a dark, damp, dusty space with cobwebs and everything. And in the other house, it was not just like an attic space. This house went, like that space went alongside the house and up over the existing house. But from the outside, looking at the house, you're like, there's no way possible that exists. But it does. So, I still don't know how to process this information, this dream, and what it truly means. And it's, wow, it's just a lot. What do you think? I'd love to hear your comments.